Welcome back to another episode of the Backlog Breakdown, a video game podcast where we seek to encourage and equip the church to engage the medium of video games wisely and responsibly. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and with me today is my co-host, my brother in Christ, my friend, Nate. How's it going, Nate?
It's okay, except for my allergies. Like allergies have been kind of running roughshod over the McKeever house, and they're killing me.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things where I don't want to get too graphic here, but every morning I wash my face and I sort of try to clean out my nose, and I'm just kind of equal parts repulsed and intrigued by what I managed to blow out of there. It
just keeps coming, right? It's like hard to stop. It's just like an infinite amount of stuff. It's like biologically something infinite garbage coming out of your nose, right?
It's shocking.
It's shocking
how awful your wordplay is. That's what's shocking.
There's no limit to it. It is infinite.
It is appalling. You're disgusting.
Disappointed, and my day is ruined. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. What is that? That's I used to love that review right there. The Popeyes chicken review.
Yeah, it's classic. Yeah.
Have you ever watched it? What is that dude? I forget that dude's name.
It goes by a bunch of different names. Review Bra, or yeah. Anyways,
anyways, have you ever watched any of the other ones?
Oh yeah. I'll dip in occasionally.
They're fun.
Yeah, he has fun. He keeps up the shtick. At least I assume it's a shtick. I am assuming he is not that. Well,
I find it hard to believe that somebody would actually be like that IRL.
Yes,
but honestly, I don't know. If it's
just very good keeping frame.
Review Bra is he's locked in. He's just locked in. But
always.
Anyways, how are you?
Yeah, man. I'm doing good. I feel like I say the same thing every time we get together, but goodness, the past couple weeks have been very busy.
Actually, hold up. Before you go any further. What? I guess I need to know how it's been.
Yeah. Okay.
I almost forgot.
Okay. You got that in. Yeah, that's fine.
The chaos that my allergies are working on me. Throwing me off my game.
There you go.
It's dude, even as we're speaking, my nose just was randomly hey, you know what'd be really sick? If I just started itching. I was like,
never stops.
I was like, don't do that. And it's oh, well, too bad, because that's what I'm going to do.
Here you go. This is life now. This is just what it is. But yeah, man. So Easter weekend, my wife went out of town for her cousin. They grew up like sisters, so they're really close. She's cousin is having her first baby and had a baby shower. So my wife surprised her by flying out and being there for a few days. So, which is great. I'm glad she was able to do it. I also had Good Friday service and Easter service because I'm, employed at a church, and did that with 3 kids in tow. So there was just a lot over that weekend. And then the following week, so a couple days after she gets back, then we've got some friends in town from out of state. And so they were here for 4 or 5 days, something like that. So, and then right after that, on Sunday morning, this past Sunday, my wife wakes up and she has a stomach bug and is just not doing well. So then that's another kind of day where, grabbing the kids, taking them to church and just juggling some stuff. So these are all good things. They are just things that take up a lot of time and resources and energy and stuff like that. And so when I say very busy, it's just because hey, things are out of the ordinary. And it's not, it would be disingenuous to say single parenting, but solo dadding. I don't know how to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But It's good stuff. That said, not as much video game playing as usual, but some video game playing, which we can talk about. There have certainly been some experiences that we need to share with each other. That's right, XP Share, where we share experiences with different media, or we might change that up and just, have some other sort of recommendations this time. Spoiler alert. That's what I'm going to be talking about. But Nate, you want to go first this time? This time,
I guess I could.
Hey-o.
I guess I will.
What you got to share with everyone?
So dude, it's kind of a bit of a broken record here, but Reagan Rose yet again has sort of
that guy.
I feel like he's just kind of been on a bit of a tear here. And it's one of his most recent episodes, videos, it's that I have a link here. It's I never felt like reading the Bible. Here's what changed.
Okay.
And I thought it was really, and it's like one of those things where it's like, in a way, you know how sometimes like a thing, but you need to be reminded of the thing.
Oh, absolutely. Especially as I get older. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this, like the principle where it's like, I think we all have been in seasons where I remember when I first came back to the church, like came back to faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I read through the Bible like 3 times in 2 years, like just super hungry for that. Like read a bunch of different commentaries and articles, all sorts of, like, I was just like, and then I kind of hit a part where it's like, I slowed down, but I was still like, I was in the word. It was just like sort of and what I would say is, in the last few years, I've had a real problem sort of maintaining consistency. And and it is kind of like, there's a little bit of guilt. There's a little bit of like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But anyways, Reagan's video kind of hit me in a way that actually I was like, oh, like I needed the reminder. And then, and he offers some like, some, I think, pretty good insight. So yeah, it's, I also think like he offers some resources, and one of the things that I'll sort of circle back around to it when we talk about sort of like challenges, but like, there's a couple things that we're going to be doing in the home. And one of the things is like, he offers like, he doesn't just like, he does offer some reading plans. And one of the plans he offers, like some of the plans he offers actually are sort of offers up as like saying like, hey, these might be good places to like start and kind of like recalibrate, or like 5-minute plans. And so the goal is, I'm going to take, I think we're going to start with a New Testament plan, but every night, 5 nights a week, we're just like, every night we're going to take 5 minutes and we're going to like sort of work through that plan together as a family.
Nice. So yeah. That's awesome. Love it, dude.
Like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that in challenges. So that would be, I think, the first thing that I would, it's sort of just, again, that's the first recommendation. I listened to a book.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. So I listened to a book fairly recently called Know Thy Gamer by Drew Dixon. And
that's right.
That title is incredibly cringy. But what I will say is, I actually kind of, after I was done with it, I thought about it and I sat with it for a little bit, and I actually think it's a really great primer, for, especially like, so it's kind of like one of those resources where if there was a family, like if there was a father or a mother or an adult who had a child in their life that they were like, that was very gaming oriented, and they were struggling to find like ways to connect. I think this might be a good place, like a good resource for that person to start and sort of like give them some basic terminology, some basic frameworks, like some ideas on how to like maybe help that kid navigate that stuff. I think it's like I said, I think it's a really great little primer. I think it's honestly too, and I would even say for the listeners of this show, one of the ways I would sort of leverage is I would actually encourage. I think in some ways what he's going to like, a lot of the material isn't going to be necessarily new to like, the people who would listen to this show, but I think it might give us a tool to help people in our churches,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Can see that.
So it's like one of those things where it's like, I think it's like kind of a useful book to be aware of, and even it's like, I was kind of like thinking about this. There's a guy in my church who, his son, it was like they really struggled to connect. And I think like, it's like almost like if I had known about this book like a few years ago, I think this would have been perfect for them at that point. Like perfect. Yeah. Like it would have been a really great tool for him at that time. So to sort of learn how to maybe sort of meet his son a little bit more where his son was at. So like I said, I don't think it's perfect. I think there are a few areas like, I have some quibbles. Maybe that's just kind of like me being a little particular. I don't know. But yeah. So I think, Know That Gamer, again, the title is like, I'm not a fan of that title. I'm kind of like, ugh, I don't even like it. Like it sort of, to me, it carries some weird implications as well. Like, but overall, I think it's a pretty solid resource, and I would just recommend it again, maybe as like something for us to have in our back pockets kind of deal.
Yeah.
The last thing I'm going to bring to the table, is, the New York Times, has that Serial Podcast Network or whatever. And there's one that sort of found its way into my algorithm called The Idiot. I think it's fairly newish, but it's by, that link doesn't work. Daggone it. It's by, I want to say M. Guesson.
You're just guessing? You're not sure?
The person who like hosts the podcast,
Gotcha.
Their name is hosted, written, and reported by M. Guesson. I'm not familiar with her work, really. But anyways,
I feel like this is set up to a joke.
No, but it's kind of, it's one of those things. It's like, it's very serial coded. So it's like, she's a reporter and her cousin basically tried to have his wife killed.
Wow.
And it's a really, like, it's not too long. It's like 5 or 6 episodes. It's not too long, but it's this really sort of interesting examination of family history and personal bias and just navigating all of that. And it's like one of those things, like I always feel weird about some of this stuff because it kind of feels like you're maybe airing dirty laundry that you shouldn't. But
sure.
But at the same time, this was like a national story. It wasn't like grabbing like tons and tons of headlines, but it was, it did make national news, So yeah. But it was just, it's really weird. And like I said, it's a really fascinating sort of just study of human nature in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, it's kind of, that one's kind of like a mixed recommendation. It's like, it's not too long. Like I said, I think most of the episodes are like half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour type thing. But there's just some really interesting questions, and sort of, even I think where the podcast ends, it's just kind of like, man, like there's just some like hard questions in it, I think, for all of us and any of us. It was interesting. It's like, I don't often hear stories about that kind of stuff. It doesn't. Yeah. So The Idiot from Serial. It's
All right.
It's like, wow. And it's what's kind of interesting is because I'm pretty sure The Idiot, that's Dostoevsky.
Yes.
But the family that, and I have to imagine that this has some bearing because the family is Russian and Russian American. So I have to imagine there's like some sort of like thing there. It's like yeah. So I have to imagine that.
It's a reference.
But yeah, I have to imagine that there's some sort of like reference or some sort of like tongue-in-cheeky kind of thing. Yeah, so that's all. That's kind of just like some stuff I've been into lately that I've kind of gotten into, and it's nice. Those would be the things that I think I would recommend. But how about you? What would you?
Well, okay, so we're Backlog Breakdown. We talk video games, but before we talk about video games, how about I talk about a piece of media that relates to a video game? Look, guys, I'm sure you've all already seen the Mario Galaxy movie, but that's got to be on the list, right? I completely forgot about it up until a little bit ago, and over Easter weekend, I took the kiddos and we saw it, and it was a ton of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's nothing groundbreaking, but man, it is just a good time. It's fun. So, Mario Galaxy movie. It's with 100% less Donkey Kong. Pretty interesting there. But
100% less Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong makes no appearances
unless he showed up during the few times when I got up to, get a refill on popcorn or drink or go to the restroom or stuff like that, which I did do multiple times because I was the only adult with my kids. So, you got to do what you got to do. There was no Donkey Kong in the making of that film, which means no Seth Rogen. So that makes it even better than the first.
I bet that broke your heart.
Yeah, that I don't know. I didn't see Diddy either. There was no Kong quest through the entire movie, at least not that I saw. Anyways, in other news, in other things that I have pieces of media that I've interacted with, I have finished all of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I've watched through the whole thing, and what a great sci-fi show. Like it was well written. There were some episodes, there was the occasional episode where it's like no, or it's starring a character you don't like, or so of course in 7 seasons there's a handful of episodes that are just like, yeah, this is not good. But by and large, it's a very good show. They present a lot of dilemmas and kind of, I think they do a really good job of kind of showing you 2 sides of every story and making arguments for different viewpoints and things like that, which is just really cool. It's a good show. The cast is great too. So moving on to a different Trek show is part of me is like, oh yeah, but they're not the same characters. So there's that. But anyways, Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's a good show. Thumbs up from me. A couple other things that I've been into. So I've been getting into, I've been doing some more guitar stuff, and I'll get to that in just a second. And a band that I liked a lot when I was younger that I hadn't heard much. Really, this is a band, they're called Seosin, that they are one of those bands that should have been bigger, but it feels like every time they started to get bigger, something would happen. And in their case, they'd lose a singer. So their original singer was Anthony Green from Circus Survive. He's been in a ton of other bands, but most notably Circus Survive. And he wasn't in the band for very long. I think he did like their first EP or something like that when he was real young. And then they ended up getting another singer, putting out a couple records, and it's good stuff. And I feel like they were pretty influential, but they never really got very big because it felt like they always kind of like got in their own way, but like, yeah, they were starting to pick up steam and then kind of stumbled. But anyways, they're back together and they just put out a new song. So, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not like the most amazing thing ever, but it's called Starting Over Again. Yeah, so it's fun stuff. I enjoy it. So Seosin, I mean, I can't vouch for what I can't vouch for. Funny thing is I was looking at the lineup because a lot of it are different members, and their lead guitarist is he was a guitarist for As I Lay Dying, if you know that band. So it's just an interesting kind of crossover because they're not as heavy as I Lay Dying. I mean, they're rock. They're
does
heavy,
does he bring a little more like depth?
This song just sounds like them. It sounds like more of them, honestly. But from rumblings and things that I've heard, it sounds like he's like they posted up a whole live video that they did last year on their YouTube. So, and I haven't watched all of it, but I watched the first few songs and I was impressed because their singer, his name is Cove. I know back in the day when he was with the band, he was not very good live. Like he couldn't hit the notes that were on the record, whereas he sounds a lot better now, even if he seems much more like a stoner, kind of like, yeah, he's also using more profanity, giving the middle finger and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I never liked that. I never understood that, why you would kind of act that way with the crowd. It's just weird. But anyways, but his singing prowess seems to have gotten a lot better. And live, anyways, your question was if the guitars live, that guitarist in particular seems like he's playing with the songs a bit more and making them a little more metal. Yeah, just in general. So anyways, that's fun stuff. The last thing that I have to recommend is just a toy that I got recently. It is a multi-effects processor called the Sonicake Smart Box is what it's called. And I've just been having so much fun with it. It's a guitar pedal, okay? But it's got so much packed into it. Obviously, it's a tuner, but it's also a looper. It's got tons of different effects like overdrive and delays and reverbs and compression and EQ and stuff like that. Like ton of different pedals in one. But it also, the coolest thing about it that I have been geeking out over is its ability to do amp models. So it can make your amp sound like other amps, which is pretty stinking cool for such a cheap piece of equipment. It's not, like studio grade stuff, but for like $80, this thing has been so much fun for practicing. I mean, you could play live with it too, for sure. Absolutely. But even just practicing at home, I'm having a lot of fun with it and busting out the guitar more often because of it. So for any guitarists out there, the Sonicake Smart Box is a lot of fun. So you've got NAMs, which are neural amp modelers, files that mimic amps in the way that they but then you also have IRs, impulse responses to anyway, sound like other stuff.
I wish you were speaking in English.
Yes, exactly. If you're a nerd, then you might know. I've only just recently come in contact with this because previously this type of at least the last time I looked into this years ago, this type of technology was only available in pieces of gear that were like $1,500. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm never gonna buy that. But now I'm in a place, few years down the road where not only is music part of my job, and so I have a budget for music stuff, but I'm also, more and now the price has gone way down. So it's like, okay, cool. I can spend some
That's like win-win
budget on this stuff. Exactly. Have fun with it. So anyways, those are just a few of the experiences that I wanted to share. But this is a video game podcast. We like to talk about video games. So Nate, what video games have you been playing? What you been into? What you been playing?
Nothing really. Destiny and Lord of the Ring Golem.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Sounds like the Flintstones. That sounds like a gay old time.
Wow.
Yabba do time. Yabba dabba do time. Did you ever watch Flintstones? Come on, man.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. No, so it's like one of those things where I don't want to it's like I kind of don't want to keep talking about it. But I'm actually like 2 or 3 weeks clean from like Marvel Snap. It's so sad that I have to use that terminology where it's like I'm clean. It's like
yep.
It's like, you got anything out there, Marvel Snap? No, yeah, I stopped playing for like it's probably been like 2 or 3 weeks since I turned it on, and it's just like it's like one of those things where it's like I'm every once in a while like I'm kind of like, oh, like, hey, like I actually think I would like this card, and I'm tempted to get back into it, but it's one of those things where kind of I'm just like I'm like I like, especially with the way that we're trying to focus on growing the podcast and stuff like that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I I need to be smarter with how I use my time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that like it's like, oh, that fixes everything, because like,
Mm-hmm.
now it's just like I get distracted in other ways. But it definitely sort of like it definitely, yeah, it it ate up a lot of time, chewed up a lot of emotional bandwidth. And yeah, overall, it just did not do anything good for me emotionally or psychologically.
Yeah.
Just made me angry a lot. So I was playing, I had a few sessions. It's like one of those things where, and we're going to be doing at some point in time in the nearest future, an episode on Gollum. So I want to kind of save some of my thoughts, but it's like,
Okay.
I've been sort of like working my way through that kind of, and then basically sort of dipping into my comfort food game, which is Destiny 2. And it's not that there's nothing new in Destiny 2. It's just like, it's like I kind of like I've still haven't, there's like content that I still haven't, you know, there's still stuff for me to do. There's
Sure.
actually like a few guns that like I'm like, I kind of want to go farm for these guns and see if I can get some good rolls on them. So yeah, but yeah, just playing some Destiny 2, because it's like it's easy. It's kind of like it's a game that I can just kind of like get in and kind of turn my brain off a little bit and not get too crazy over. So yeah, that's really, I haven't been playing much of anything else. I've got some plans, like, you know, I do. It's like one of those things where with Link's Awakening, like I found a guide that I think will help me sort of get through, because I'm on that the temple that I'm on. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
think that like, and I think if I can just get like, I was doing some reading, it's like that the temple that I'm on, like the seventh temple, and they're
Okay.
like, yeah, pretty much everybody's like, yeah, it's the hardest one in the game and it kind of sucks. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah,
Hmm.
this makes sense. Um, because it's just like it's the different levels and
Yeah.
keeping track of all of that.
Okay.
It's
Yeah. 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 That's right. Destroying the pillars. Yeah.
it's just it's just the hardest to keep track of, in a lot of ways. So uh I'm gonna get that, and I want to get back into that game because like we want to do an episode on that as well. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have some stuff that like it's kind of also one of those things where it's just like I want to kind of get this stuff out of the way, and then I maybe even give myself like a couple weeks to just step away from games for a little bit, because
Okay.
it's, I think Gollum is really kind of evoking this like almost like this is work kind of thing, and
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely think I'm gonna need like to decompress after that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to offset it by playing like things that I enjoy as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, that's, so I haven't really picked up. I mean, I did pick up a copy of Shin Megami Vengeance, but that's a
Mm.
podcast game, so we're going to be talking about that at some point in time later this year. I have no idea if by the time this goes live, I have no idea, but I got it for 25 bucks at Best Buy.
Sweet.
So yeah, and it's just a
Nice.
standard version. And it's like maybe someday I'll run down like if I really like it after we play it, maybe someday I'll run down like a steel box or something, but
Yeah.
or steel book. But yeah, just kind of like there's a whole bunch of stuff like that. I'm just like, it's kind of like I've got to get through what's on my plate now. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like it feels very much like Lord of the Ring Golem kind of like feels like I've got to like, it's like when you're a kid and you don't like vegetables, or it's like it's a
Mm-hmm.
vegetable you really don't like. So like, I don't know, like I hate cooked carrots. So it's like
Okay.
Cooked carrots are disgusting. Like, I don't know why people would do that. Like, carrots are fine. Like, regular carrots, get a little bit of ranch dip, carrot sticks, whatever. Like, yeah. Sick. Cooked carrots are kind of the worst. I hate them. Mm-hmm. I'll eat them because I'm an adult and I don't have the palate of a 4-year-old. But they're not good. They're not a good vegetable. So it's like,
agree.
It's like, I'll do it, but like, it's kind of like, I'm also like fighting with myself, and that's super fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Why did you ruin these carrots?
Yeah. Why did you ruin the carrots? Like, why would you do that to perfectly good carrots? Like, they were fine the way they were. But yeah, I mean, like, dude, I love shredded carrot on like a salad,
for sure,
even like as a part of a slaw or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's all I've been playing. So
cool.
Haven't beaten anything. What's that?
I've been playing the cooked carrots of video games. There you go.
Yeah, dude, that's less flavorful than cooked carrots. But yeah, so I'm still at a -1. Yeah, but yeah. Nice. How about you, man? What have you been playing lately, brother?
Okay, so like I said, have not had very much game time, but the games that I have been playing. Okay, I talked last episode about Alien Soldier, this crazy game. I didn't realize, at least I don't think I did, unless time is being all weird on me, that Alien Soldier that I talked about for Sega Genesis was actually not released physically over here in America, that it was only available on the Sega channel here in America. It was a Japanese only game from Treasure. And so that was kind of the hype. I think its first release here in America was actually the Wii Virtual Console. I could be wrong on that, but I think that was its first actual North American release. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I finished the game. Heavy use of save states. I think I made that clear last time as well. The game is essentially a boss rush. There are short levels which generally are only there so that you can regain your health. They're so short. And I mean, there's tons of deaths and whatever. The game is stupid difficult if you were to actually try and play through it from beginning to finish. Like you'd have to memorize so much. There's a boss that was like 5 different stages, one right after another. And each one of them, while not the most difficult bosses in the game, I still died plenty on each version of this boss. So I cannot imagine having to go through all 5 stages and memorize everything that's going on. So game is super hard, boss rush, kind of like what I assume Cuphead is in a lot of ways. But a really cool, a really unique take on the run and gun genre. You have a pretty big sprite, but you have a bunch of different guns at your arsenal that you kind of put together out of 4 different guns, and the ammo that you need to kind of juggle. Anyways, just a really cool game, very satisfying when you finish off these different bosses. I believe there were 25, 26 levels. Like there were a ton of boss fights throughout the game. Some harder than others. I mean, the last boss was actually not that difficult comparatively compared to a lot of the other ones. So I think it's a great game with save states. I think it is a stupid game otherwise, unless you're like actually a really, like old school gamer, like, no, I'm going to memorize this, I'm going to get good. Cool. Good for you. That is not me. That is not me at all. It did end up taking me quite a bit longer than I expected it to, from like the how long to beat number of, 3 or 4 hours or whatever. No, I spent a lot more time on it because I was dying a lot and going back to the beginning of the boss battle. So anyways, really like the game, really unique. But again, caveat is I really like it with save states. So I did beat that one, rolled credits. It's got a crazy history. Apparently it was supposed to be like 100 boss battles. So they cut it down. It has like an absolutely insane story that does not make sense because of how much they cut from it. And it was hard to, like, the whole opening scroll is talking about this faction conquered this world, and so this other faction rose up to fight this faction, and one of the characters was like a spy and infiltrated and got this serum and changed this one person into partially an animal, and so that character actually went back in time and then and it's just like, what is even going on in this opening like credit roll? Like, I don't even understand who I am or what I'm doing. I'm just here to like shoot bad guys and crazy looking boss thingies. So anyways, great game. Alien Soldier, I gave it a thumbs up. It's bonkers. It's bonkers in a number of different ways. So I get -1 for beating Alien Soldier with save states. Only other things I've been playing, like you, I've been playing Lord of the Rings Gollum. I've not played that much of it. It does feel like it's a few hours. I don't know if that's actually on the roll. My initial thoughts are that it is not as terrible as I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off quite a bit stronger than I expected it to.
Yeah.
But then it kind of hits a wall, and I'm like, why were these decisions made? And that's all I'll say on that. So, have played a little bit of Lord of the Rings Gollum. The other game that I have been playing off and on, that I just enjoy, it's just so much fun, is Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. I love rhythm games, man. The more that I play them, I mean, goodness, there's so many good ones. And now there's another one coming for Switch too, this Rhythm Heaven game. So I'm sure that one's going to be a lot of fun too whenever I end up picking that up. But Persona Dancing's great. Taiko no Tatsujin is great, and Theater Rhythm's a great time as well. So what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, speaking of games this is a wild pivot, but did you watch any of that Triple I Initiative thing that happened within the last couple of weeks here?
No.
The people who made Dead Cells are making a new Castlevania side scroller, and it looks awesome.
Okay, is that it's just like vampire. It's Dracula. Oh, dang it! It has like a really generic name, right? Castlevania Vampire Hunter or something like that. Goodness, why can't I think of it? Vampire of Darkness. I don't know,
dude. If it's that bad, I might not have.
No, but it's like it's a callback to like the first game. Dang it! My goodness, why can't I think of it? Belmont's Revenge.
Belmont's
Curse. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, like, that's just I don't know. That sounds like what is the third game? The third game is Dracula's Curse, isn't it?
I don't know, man.
I should know this. I played it. It's good.
But yeah, anyways, you should go check that out because I know that.
Okay.
I have seen trailer,
snippets.
It looks really good. It's a wild pivot. Also, I was reminded while you were talking that I actually probably ought to pay attention to my notes because I realized last episode I talked about the fact that I had started the Pragmata demo.
Yes.
I have since cleared the Pragmata demo a few times. The game has actually come out at this point in time and I think it was like sitting at an 86 or an 87 on OpenCritic.
Yeah, it's pretty high. Yeah.
That demo, that game might be like, it's like one of those things where it's like, if I get some birthday money, I might be tempted to pick it up because that demo was really cool. Like, I got through it and I was like, okay, yeah. And then I was like, I beat it. I played it and I was like, hey, cool. And I was like, I beat it. I beat it. And then I played it again like 2 or 3 more times. And I was like, I really like this. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you kind of get into the system, it's a lot of fun. It's pretty cool. So,
nice.
Yeah, the game's out now. So like, if you guys are curious, and you're interested, I'd say check out the demo first. And, I think the demo will probably sell you on it. 'Cause it's really cool. Like, it's really neat. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So yeah, I did want to say that, but, anyways, anybody who's been listening this far and everything, you guys might be saying, hey, what's the deal with these numbers? The -1, the -7, what is this? If this is your first time, well, hello, welcome to the show. Also, I'm sorry in advance because, I don't know. You're probably fine. It'll probably be fine. It'll be okay. But that's we're referencing the Backlog Beatdown. That's a meta that you are listening to the Backlog Breakdown. We actually, the Facebook group used to be called, it's still there. It's called the Backlog Book Club, but there's the discourse, all those things, whatever. But the beatdown is a meta that we run all year long. And the TLDR version of it is the more games you play, the more you subtract. So you're taking away from that pile of shame. You're removing games from the backlog. And when you buy things, you add points. So the goal is to get as low a number as possible. Yeah, and that's it. It's a little more nuanced than that. We still haven't locked in the official 2026 rules. Because we're the worst. We're just the worst. But yeah, if you're interested in that, if that sounds like something you like to check out, maybe look at, reach out to one of us, get a hold of us on the Discord, email us, whatever, all the things. There will be a link tree, in the show notes. You can get a hold of us that way. Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. We like doing it. The community, there's some guys who like doing it, and yeah. So yeah, other things that are cool and you might want to check out. It's us. It's this podcast. We have a Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you get early and uncut access to each and every episode. You get a patron exclusive episode or podcast called The Bro Hang, which tends to be a lot more conversational, more freeform. Kind of, sometimes it's a little heavier, sometimes it's a little lighter. Your mileage may vary on that. If you like the banter and the kind of ridiculousness, well, there's more of that. Yeah. Also, our patrons get access to our recording schedule. They get to see what we're going to be talking about. They also have the opportunity to pitch topics. Actually, last week, a friend of the show, he's actually one of our patrons, Parker, had sort of pitched me on something. So we had him hop on and we did an episode with him. We were talking about you guys might be saying, why are you guys playing Lord of the Ring Golem? That's not a very good game. Thank our patrons for that. It's their fault. Blame them, because I do. But also Link's Awakening. We've got some other stuff on there. Bravely Default, Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance, Absalom, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. There's 7 games, I think, for this year, slotted for this year. And we've got a couple topics with other patrons that we're going to be, sort of working in as as the year progresses. So in a lot of ways, our patrons, they get to nominate topics. They can nominate and vote on games for us to play throughout the year. They have a little more access to us, and they help, really kind of shape and offer input on the show. So if you like what we're doing here and you've done the sharing and the caring, you've done the rating and the reviewing, and you're looking for a way to partner with us or maybe go a little bit above and beyond, again, for as little as $1 a month or more, feel free to give us more. We'd like more money. That'd be cool. But that helps us to sort of do what we're doing here. So yeah, also, link for that will be in that link tree that I mentioned. So lastly, but surely not leastly, we are proud members of the Playwell Network alongside our friends Paul Lytle, the Techno Funk Boy, Wesley Ray, the Henshin Dad himself, Porcho, aka Nicholas Porch, aka Porcho, aka the Wonder from Down Under, and lastly, but surely not leastly, Quick Mark, or Mark Erickson from Quick Play. We love these guys. They all wrestle with, again, it's in the name, the Playwell Network, on sort of wrestling with the idea of how do we play well. So again, we love these guys. We love their content. So here's a word from one of them.
Hey, wow. It's radical that you're listening to this ad. I'm Nick, the high-energy host of Nothing New Under the Porch. This podcast has been going through the golden years, and it's probably getting closer to rock bottom now. But that's no reason not to listen. You'll learn heaps about me, about playing games well, about international guests through insightful interview questions, and you'll learn about games that don't exist. So come join me under the porch.
Please listen, I'm desperate, I promise you'll like it. I'm desperate and hungry, so listen.
And we're back. Okay, so folks, tonight we didn't sort of talk about it too much, but tonight we're going to be talking about Bioshock Infinite. Yeah, and I think there are a few disclaimers that we probably ought to sort of just open up with. It's just one of those things where, this is a game that in a lot of ways, and you wrote this, and I think this is a good one to sort of this is good to open up with, and it's saying like that disclaimer: we will not do this game justice. This is not a comprehensive review, and this is pretty much just our thoughts on the game. And I feel like in some ways we could spend probably hours really, and maybe someday we will be in a place where like we can do sort of a state of the art kind of comprehensive like breakdown and deep dive of all the different imagery and everything, like, because I don't know if like this game is necessarily on their radar. I think like I really like the state of the art guys, but I do think they tend to be a lot more focused on JRPGs versus like other, like there are a lot of other games that I think like it would be really interesting to see them wrestle with the different, like I don't think they've done Bioshock or Bioshock Infinite. I haven't like I haven't like scoured their library, but it'd be really interesting to see how they respond to something. And so someday maybe we'll do something like that. But I think for tonight, we just wanted to sort of talk about this game and put some of our thoughts out on it, and kind of give our, our brothers and sisters, because again, sort of even sort of looking at our sort of like mission statement for the podcast is that we want to help the church, we want to help equip and encourage the church to play wisely and well. And so this is kind of what we're going to be offering as a bit of an overview, and just some of our thoughts on Bioshock Infinite. And it's gonna be messy, because I think this game is kind of messy in some interesting ways, and but yeah. Yep. So if you are looking for some resources and something else, is just like some of. And again, I will probably reference some of this, but a friend of the show, Parker, he found a bunch of different references. Some actually some of it's like fairly scholastically oriented. It's fairly academic, but there were 2 essays or articles that I came that he kind of sent my way regarding that dealt with Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite. They were both written by Dr. Frank Bozeman. The one was an article out of a series of essays, but it was called The Lamb of Comstock, which was actually a particular section but it's dystopia and religion in video games. And we have a link to some of that, but also he also found a copy of The Construction of American Religion in Bioshock Infinite by Dr. Frank Bozeman. And that's a more substantial essay. And there's some really interesting analysis in those. So if you guys are wanting to maybe sort of dig into if you're wanting to wrestle with some of the heavier like meat here, there's a lot of really good food for thought in those articles. And again, we'll probably be referencing, I will probably be referencing some of that, but again, we're going to treat this more as like sort of an overview and some, So
the way that I see it is, for this episode, it's more of, hey, we played the game and here are our thoughts on it, as opposed to spending a ton of time digging into all that the game has to offer. And part of that, frankly, is kind of just the practical concern that I do think this game has a lot to say. Whether it says it well, I mean, we'll continue to talk about that. but there are probably a lot of things in the game that I missed, that went over my head. But the things that I do want to talk about, I do want to talk about. Like I do have a lot of thoughts on this game, particularly those around expectations, and then how this game, because as a sequel, I haven't played the second Bioshock, but as a sequel to the original Bioshock, which I liked quite a bit. It had a lot to live up to, and I've heard people talk about this game that it meets, and for some people even exceeds the first game. So there's that expectation piece. But anyways, I also we don't have 6 hours to kick around this game, so intentionally so we're not seeking to be comprehensive about the game. Merely some of the stuff that stuck out to us. So, in lieu of saying this at the end of the episode, hey, if there are things that we don't talk about that you would like us to talk about, or that maybe we can put an addendum out there or something like that, hit us up online. Let us know what you think. Go to linktree.com/the backlog breakdown, and you can find us somewhere online, Discord, email, whatever. And let us know, and maybe we can dig into something that we don't talk about here tonight. Because there are lots of things within this game, and kind of the highlights, the things that stuck out to me are the things that I want to talk about. And it's probably still going to be a substantial conversation, but it's also not going to be 6 hours.
Yeah, it's and like I said, maybe someday we'll be in a position where we can sort of like, we can, sort of spread that out over the space of like 3 or 4 episodes. We could go back and do a much deeper analysis over the space of like 4 or 5 episodes, or
right.
Just whatever. But I think for now, and for sort of what we're sort of aiming for, I think it is, again, just it's probably a little more practical, and it's hopefully people are better served by just sort of giving a bit of an overview, a bit of an abstract on, and some like just sort of wrestling with some of it, and sort of like keying people into the game and sort of what they can possibly expect. So I think too, like, just a good place, when we talk about games, we often talk about baggage, and I think you sort of alluded to some of that like,
Can I insert one thing real quick?
Yeah.
Just as we're talking about the disclaimer, is that we're also not going to talk about the DLC, Burial at Sea, which has a lot of story implications that ties this game into the first game. Not talking about that tonight. Also not talking about the history of this game, which I have since come to learn was extensive, and that this game has gone through a lot of revisions. There were a lot of ways. So perhaps some of what you alluded to, the messiness of this game, is due to how it came about, and stuff that they were creating and stuff that they ended up cutting and stuff like that. Perhaps, but what I'm saying is we won't be talking about that tonight. We're talking about the finished product and our experiences with the finished product. That said, you wanted to talk about our experience and our previous experience with the game and baggage. And like I said, I had heard very good things about this game, but had not played it until recently, until a few months ago, when I finished it actually pretty quickly over the course of like maybe a week and a half, something like that. Like I blasted through it because I had some time. And frankly, because the gameplay, like the moment to moment gameplay, is pretty fast paced, and it hooked me. No pun intended with the sky hook and all that stuff. So it.
See, you didn't have to mention that. You made a choice. You chose poorly. You chose poorly.
Well, I don't even know how to recover from that. But yeah. So, anyways, that's really that's all I have to say on it. I played the first Bioshock, have not played the second Bioshock. There we go. How about yourself? Yeah. You played some of it before this playthrough, right?
I had played some of it before, and it was one of those things where I sort of fell off at a certain. I can't even remember where I fell off the first time. But I loved the first Bioshock. I actually really enjoy Bioshock 2. I think it's different, but I remember thinking like when I played it the first time, I remember thinking like it's definitely like Bioshock 2 is definitely not as good as original Bioshock, and it's actually was made by a completely different team in a lot of ways.
Right.
But I thought it was an interesting game, and I kind of liked it. It would be kind of fun to go back and play that at some point in time. I think, though, the thing that's really kind of funny about this is that for some reason, and kind of one of the things that sort of set this off is back on the old top 100 list. This used to be on the old top 100 list.
Right.
And
it was very high in the rankings.
It was fairly high.
Within the top 20, I want to say.
Was it that high? I mean, we could probably find that list somewhere. But anyways, it was, and we were talking about it, and we kind of realized that neither one of us had ever played it the whole way through. And so you played it, and then I was like, well, I played it in response to that. And so that was the sort of in a lot of ways, the inciting event for this episode tonight. I just think, like I said, it's kind of funny that, it
was number 15.
It was number 15.
Yep.
We must have been on drugs when we did that.
Well, I knew that I had never played it. I mean, I did not keep that hidden.
I just don't understand.
I think it had to do with the community.
That high.
It was a leftover from the community.
I can see the original Bioshock being.
Oh yeah, I think
15.
that was like number 8.
Yeah,
9.
Wow. Anyways, it just 15. Again, there's a reason we've abandoned that format. But anyways, so it's kind of one of those things where, that's sort of the inciting event, and it was one of those things where I had I didn't have a ton of. I liked Bioshock. I liked Bioshock 2 again, and I think the original Bioshock is like a bit of a triumph. I think that game is like singularly masterful in a lot of ways. And playing Infinite, so Ken Levine directed the original Bioshock. He did not direct Bioshock 2, but then he came back for Infinite. And so coming back to it, it was like, I remember like everything around the game. And it's like, to be fair, like the marketing, I remember like the marketing and everything. And like, you see the songbird and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, this looks so cool. And then I played it, and like I said, it just didn't really resonate. I kind of like played it for a while, and because like I didn't beat it. Like, so something must have like popped up to sort of get in the way, and I can't remember why. But so it kind of sat unfinished. And honestly, if it hadn't been for you playing it, I don't know if I ever would have gone back to this. I mean, I'm glad I did.
Okay.
I'm glad I did, because I think what's there is it's an interesting game. There's a lot of messiness to it, just thematically and everything else. But it is an interesting game. And I do think like Levine is like one of those guys that I would say I don't always like what he says. And in fact, like, we'll probably talk a fairly certain to a fairly great extent about some of the ways in which I would disagree with him or like push back or whatever. But I think in some ways, like, he does really have a bit of a master's touch. And so it's like, even after playing this, like, it is one of those things where it's like, I'm wrestling with it, but it's like, I'm very curious about what Judas is going to be like and what that's going to be. Like, I think Levine is doing interesting things with narrative, and he's got some really interesting ideas. And so, and there's just like, there's some really wild stuff in this game, not just thematically, but even some of the concepts that he's kind of messing around with, like playing around with. So yeah. And it's like, I mean, there's a whole lot of really interesting stuff sort of going on with this, but it is messy. It's kind of, whatever. So let's talk about, like, let's sort of moving along here, and sort of we're looking at sort of like the spoiler free side of things. Just like, so in the notes here, you have game feel, mechanics, and moment to moment gameplay. And I think like it's good. it's probably excellent in a lot of ways. Like, there were times where, it's a first person shooter, but again, it's sort of borrowing from the original Bioshock. And so you've got, instead of I forget what they're called. The different powers in Bioshock were sort of called, they had a certain label. It's like you would use Atom to sort of get this. They're called vigors in this one. And
plasmids.
That's what it is. So it's vigors in this, and there are these tonics that you come across, and some will give you new different powers. And so there's you do like a firebomb, and you can send the one I used all the time was like the one that would let you charm people basically, and sort of and hijack the machines. That was probably almost always in my repertoire.
Absolutely.
But there's a variety of, and so it's like you're kind of constantly balancing like the gunplay with the vigors and stuff like that. And you can, upgrade your guns, you can upgrade your vigors. And I would say like the actual, like the gameplay, the moment to moment, just the feel of it, it plays really well. Like it's not super snappy. It's not super twitchy, but it does move pretty quickly sometimes. And there were a few fights. I think sometimes what I would say is the verticality in this game. And so because it's in Rapture, you're under the water and everything's like, there might be verticality, but it's basically, you're just fighting in rooms for the most part. Whereas, what is Columbia? Columbia is a floating city. So you're in the sky and there's lots of open space. And like sometimes like enemies are just like, they're flying over your head. They're coming up from below you. Like there's all sorts of, sometimes it did feel like that was a little bit almost like too much, but that could be a little bit overwhelming. But overall, I felt like the game just mechanically felt really good to play. The weapons felt pretty good. I tended to, there's sort of a delineation where it's like you can play with some of the Vox Populi weapons. Like there's sort of a delineation. Like there's the Colombian weapons, and then there's the Vox Populi weapons. And there's like, they have two different feels. And it was like, I had just spent so much time sort of getting used to like the more, again, the Colombian weapons that I just had, like, I had found my niche, and I was just like, well, I'll just hang out with, like, I'll use these, kind of like focus in on these 2 or 3 guns and just sort of rotate between those. So that for me, like I said, gameplay wise, I think it's pretty good. Feels pretty good. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned that, that it's not super twitchy, but it is more twitchy than the first game.
Yeah.
I do think it feels distinctly different from the first game. It seems as though, I might be reading into this too much, but the rise of Call of Duty in between the first game and this game, influenced it a bit. Like you said, it's not super twitchy. It's not there, but I do think it does feel more, I believe you might have said this before we started actually recording, but it does feel more like an action game than the first game did.
The first game is very like horror coded and sort of reminiscent of like almost more of like Resident Evil or Dead Space, kind of like those kind of vibes, where this does feel a lot more action oriented. So I think that's good.
And I felt that even from the beginning of the game. I mean, there's kind of a big bombastic opening, but then once you start pulling out guns and running around, I wasn't sure how to react. So, I mean, first-person shooter games are not a majority of the games that I play. And so I was trying to play more, because especially in this one, well, let me compare it to the original Bioshock, because again, I'm talking about my experience here. I played the original. In the original Bioshock, because it feels more like a horror game, the enemies feel more like creatures or like demented humans, or like something is very wrong with these the splicers and whatnot that you're fighting in the first game. in dimly lit hallways and stuff like that. Whereas in this one, you're in kind of this bright city and people are shooting at you. So I was like, oh, I don't want to shoot back at these people. Like, these are other humans. Like, I'd rather just try and duck around different things and run around. And anyways, that's not how you're supposed to play this game. It does want you to shoot everyone, like, sure, you can run into a shot, like you can get undercover for a little bit, but basically you're going to want to clear out all of your enemies before you move forward to the next area. So it took a little bit just for me mentally to kind of get there. Once I was there, then it's like, okay, yeah, let's go. So I do think there, especially with this one, because it's not as like you said, like a horror game, it almost feels more violent because of the contrast of, oh, it's a bright, open, happy city. And then you start seeing, I mean, it very much intentionally in the opening of the game, one of the first deaths that you see is very gory. And it was like viscerally so. To me, I had a reaction of just like, oh, wow. They really like wanted you to feel the fact that you're, ripping into another human being, which is, it was jarring.
Well, and I think, so kind of, you brought up the original.
Mhm.
I don't think it's any more violent than the original Bioshock. And I think that it's like you said, you mentioned this, and I think that it is much more jarring because Rapture is run down. It's kind of horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's there from the get-go. And when you're sort of starting out in Colombia, it's this, kind of almost like utopian,
right.
Turn of the century, like early 19th century America kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Where, and it is lots of like, you're in the sky. So there's lots of like natural light, lots of sunlight, lots of sort of like bright blues, and the people that you're sort of walking around this city for a little bit, this floating city, and everybody is like pretty happy and well-to-do, and this sort of upper middle class to upper class kind of thing, where it's like, and then when the game kind of like really kicks in and you're starting, it's like the violence feels very at odds with everything that you've experienced up until this point. And I think like that, again, like the original Bioshock, the color palette is like a lot more subdued. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're still getting, they're probably not, it's probably not that different in a lot of ways. It's just the setting actually provides a lot more of a contrast there, where it's like, oh, like, the bright splashes of red and, the explosions and everything else are really, really stand out because, you're kind of gunning people down in an otherwise idyllic setting,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. The only caveat to that, I would say, is the first death, because I do think the game intentionally rubs your nose in it, because it is very up close and personal. You're being grabbed by these, police officers basically, and he takes this hook and rips into another human being, like very up close and personal and highlighted. And so yes, like the contrast is there to make it worse. But also, I think they know what they're doing in like showing this to you face to face, as opposed to in a firefight. So that's only the caveat I'd add there. But in terms of overall, now that I've spent a ton of time just with, kind of setting the scene, overall gameplay, like I mentioned before, it hooked me. Like I enjoyed it quite a bit once I kind of got into the groove. I do think it's more streamlined than the first game. So it kind of like, I was going to say, pick your poison. Like I probably had more fun in the moment to moment with this game, but it's less strategic than the first game. The first game, like you think more about how you're going to do things and get across and stuff like that. This one is more twitchy, not as much as modern Call of Duty, but there is more kind of just spur of the moment.
Well, and there's just like, even sort of that action game feel. Like there's just a lot more movement in this one, where you're finding things to sort of like that hook that you get, where the dude like sort of like grinds it, like Booker, your character grinds it into a dude's face. Like it's a traversal tool. So it's your melee tool. It's like, it's your wrench, it's your crowbar, it's your whatever, but it's also a traversal tool. So there are these rails that sort of, again, this is a city in the clouds. It's a floating city. And so there's a lot of these rails that sort of like go all over the different landscapes, or cityscapes, and you can jump on those and kind of ride those around. And again, it's like there are like magnetized points that you can sort of like, aim it at and zip up to and all this other stuff. And so again, there is a lot more movement. And again, it's not it's not twitchy like Call of Duty, but it is much more you're moving, you're not sort of, you're encouraged, I think, just through gameplay to sort of be moving around and constantly repositioning.
And I think the game encourages you also to be more aggressive because of your companion character, who is able to throw you ammo and health, which in the first game, it feels more scarce. Whereas in this game, it's kind of like, don't worry, you can always get more. She can always kind of pull it out of thin air.
Well, and even sort of like, the way that she's able to create certain opportunities for you.
Right.
Yeah, there's like, again, there's just a lot more, I think, maybe dynamism to the combat scenarios, where it's just like, there's kind of a lot of different balls to kind of keep juggling in regards to the gameplay. But and I think too, just like sort of like, we talked a little bit about just how it is kind of jarring, because the setting is sort of sunshiny and stuff like that. And I think that just leads to, I think, a little bit of a natural segue into just talking about a little bit about the art direction. I think one of the things that I really like about the original Bioshock is the really interesting and unique art direction they pursue. And I think a lot of that carries into this. But again, it's sort of like, it is leaning into that sort of like turn of the century America kind of thing. Again, it's sort of like that early 19th century, post Civil War, like kind of feel, where, and so it's, but again, the characters, like there's a very like particular design in a lot of ways for a lot of these characters, where it's just like, they're not pressing super hard into high def realism. And some of that is just, some of that is just a product of the times. Like, I think this is really good art in a lot of ways, but like it has a style. It's not it's not as stylized as something like Dishonored, but it does.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
But it does, like, it's kind of a similar camp, a similar school of design, where it's like, it looks good, but it's a little cartoony, little ish. Like, they're not so worried about sort of capturing, again, this sort of like these photorealistic experiences. It's much more like, hey, we're just going to, like, we've actually got kind of a cool style here. This looks good. We're going to stick with it. And it looks good. It's a little cartoony. It's a little whatever, but
and I appreciate it too. I mean, I'm glad they didn't go for the photorealism. It is a little misleading. The cover art is a little misleading, because that is more photorealistic. But you take those characters, you kind of make them in that style that the original game is in, but more kind of Americana feeling, and that's what you get. So they do look more cartoony, but in a stylized way. Yeah. And I appreciate it though. I like it. I think it works.
Yeah.
I don't think, where in some cases, like, I think if they dialed it up more, I mean, I would say even in some cases, like you mentioned, Dishonored, that takes me out of it because of how I feel like that was dialed up more. Whereas this one doesn't. It feels like a deliberate choice. I mean, obviously it's a deliberate choice no matter what it is. But no, I mean, I think it works. It works for the game. It does not work against the game in my mind. I think it fits.
Yeah,
and it's pretty unique in terms of in video game feels. Yeah,
I did want to sort of one thing too is like, I don't know if you had noticed though, like especially when you can sort of walk around the town and you hear the different radio, or sometimes there'd be the barbershop quartets. Did you recognize any of those? Like, did you pay attention to any of that music? I know that you're a music guy, but did you pay attention to any of that?
No, I actually didn't. The one that I noticed is kind of like in your face at the beginning of the game that they're singing Beach Boys.
Yes.
You know, the barbershop quartet was singing Beach Boys. That one I did notice, but that's like an unskippable cutscene, you know? So like, yes, of course you're going to notice that.
And that
I didn't necessarily pick up on other ones.
That will, when we get into spoiler territory, like we can kind of talk about like, but like that's really jarring because like you're hearing this and like, what is going on here? Like you're listening to the Beach Boys done in sort of like the 4-part barbershop sort of quartet harmony kind of thing. And you're like, what is this? And but yeah, that even that, like this sort of like that idea is repeated often. And it does. The story reveals why some of that is kind of going on.
Right.
But yeah, you know, sort of, I don't, is there anything else in sort of like the spoiler free side of things that you want to hit on before we kind of get into talking a little bit more, like sort of cracking some of this open and talking a little bit more about like just story content?
I mean, we've talked about Colombia as an area. I do think it is interesting. Like I like the opening of the game. It is very reminiscent of the first Bioshock, of the travel to Rapture in the first Bioshock, the travel to Colombia and how you're shot off, you know, into the sky, kind of a thing. It rhymes, right? As George Lucas would say. And so it's it is familiar, but I do think it's also interesting. You know, it has its own, you know, kind of setting there, and then kind of figuring out, okay, what's the deal with this place? I like the world that you're set in. I think it makes a good first impression, and like I said, you know, that it kind of gets more jarring after that. You know, I don't know that there's much in terms of characters that we can talk about without getting into spoilers, and so. As we move into spoilers, I really would just caution anyone against reading too much before you play the game. I would say just experience it for yourself. But with that, as we move into spoilers, I do want to just give kind of like a baseline recommendation for the game, or at least or caveats or something for anyone who wants to dip out, who hasn't played the game already. My without giving any more than this, I would say if you haven't played any of these games, I much prefer the first game to this one because of its story over this one. I've talked about the differences in gameplay. So if you are more of like a fast paced, okay, I'd understand why you'd want something more like this game. But I would say play the first one before you play this one. I think what you said earlier, I would completely agree with it. We haven't talked too much, you know, before going into this episode, but I do think that this game is messy. It was messier than I expected. And I think ultimately, again, I don't want to give any spoilers. Ultimately, the message that this game lands on is very dark. It is not a hopeful outlook at all. And right, you can say, oh, well, was Bioshock a really hopeful outlook? You know, we can have discussion. I mean, we have a whole episode on Bioshock.
Like,
it's,
yeah.
The answer that it provides for the question that it sets up is, whew, boy, yeah.
Well, I would say this. It's sort of a preemptive sort of kind of wrapping up thoughts, like, and I will explain this when we get into the spoiler, but I would just sort of say, like, if you're still listening, you're still sort of interested, I wouldn't categorize this as a should play or a must play. I would actually, now, the original Bioshock, that's a pretty strong should play, borders on must play, like, to me. I think that game is again singular and sort of like just what it does. I think that this is a can play. As far as Christians, I think Christians can play it. And again, I'll qualify some of these statements as we get a little bit, but this is a game that I think really does, like, this is not for all audiences, and this is also a game that I think that messiness and the difficult, like the darkness and the difficulty of a lot of its themes and a lot of what it's saying, it needs to be wrestled with and approached with a lot of discernment, a little bit, and caution. And so this is a game, again, I think you can play it. I think there are some interesting things there to wrestle with, but this isn't recommended for a lot. Like, this isn't recommended for everybody. This is like kind of like going in here and saying, like, hey, very much buyer beware. And again, on the spoiler side of things, like, we will qualify some of that, and we're not going to get, we're not doing a deep analysis or of the story or the themes or anything like that. Again, like, but we will qualify our statements. So, cool. That's kind of, that's where I would land that part.
Yeah. Then with that, let's get into some spoilers. Do you like how it's I mean, that's not exactly quartet. There weren't 4 voices in there, but still, it has a similar feel.
Maybe, it does. Maybe you ought to sort of go for, see if you can find like a barbershop quartet, some AI slop.
That's true. AI is getting better and better every day. Might not even be able to tell that it's AI anymore. Anyways,
at some point in time, I'm kind of debating, and I know this is a bit of an aside. I think my next bite size is actually going to be on generative AI and the meaningfulness of labor. And like, we've talked about it, and we use, and full disclosure, we do use AI to generate our thumbnails.
Have you seen our thumbnails? Yeah.
A lot of our sound, like our tracks and everything, and it's like, listen, like, if we were doing this full time, like, if this was our careers and we were making like lots and lots of money off this, or even just enough money to live on, like, I don't know that we would utilize it. Like, it's like, I think we would either, like, if we had the time and the resources, we would just do this stuff ourselves. But like, we don't, and it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter in some ways. Like, this isn't like, we aren't creating like high art, and we also aren't like, anyways, I think there's a conversation to be said about this stuff that, like, and I have some ideas. And so I think maybe my next bite size might be about that. Anyways, that was a complete, you guys are going like, what does this have to do with anything? So
it's a spoiler for the next episode.
Spoiler for the next bite sized. I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind. I am a little fickle. I can be fickle.
Who knows?
So I think, though, like, I don't want to get too hardcore into the story, because it just, like, it's one of those things where, going back to that disclaimer, like, I think if we really wanted to, like, really get into the nitty gritty with this story, like, it's 6 or 7 hours worth of content and sort of like deep analysis. I think, we're just kind of like trying to sketch out a bit of an abstract here. And so, like, the game opens up with Booker DeWitt, and Josh, you mentioned the spoiler free stuff, but like, it sort of opens up almost like sort of in lockstep with the original Bioshock, where you're sort of being you're well, not quite, like somebody is rowing a boat. Instead of like having a plane crash into the middle of the ocean, somebody's rowing a boat up to a lighthouse. And but it's like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you climb the stairs, you walk up to the lighthouse, you get in, there's a thing in the lighthouse, you get in that, you hit the button, but instead of going down like you do in Rapture, you get launched into the sky, and you get up there and you get launched into the city of Columbia, which is, again, it's this floating city in the clouds kind of thing. And the opening and sort of we'll touch on this again later, I think, when we discuss the ending. But sort of, you get into Columbia, and the initial area that you land in, and it takes a while before, like, it's not super long, but I'd probably say it's like 20 or 30 minutes where you're just kind of like, you're going through this stuff, you're exploring Columbia, and because you're kind of get there, and all you know is that Booker, your character Booker DeWitt, has been sent there to retrieve a girl, like, and it's sort of but the original area, the opening area is actually like this welcome center, and it's like a chapel, right? And you see sort of almost in sort of a very like the portrayal of like the Catholic saints. You see George Washington and Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson as like, and it talks about the three founders, and they each have this sort of this icon. Like, George Washington has a sword, Ben Franklin has a key, Jefferson has a scroll, right? And it's sort of like, these are the three primary virtues, of Columbia. But as you continue through this chapel, you come up to a pastor, and basically he says, in order to go any further, you basically have to get baptized. Yeah. And so he baptizes you by submersion, and he almost drowns you. And you kind of like, you fade to black. And then when you wake back up, you're in Columbia. And again, it's sort of this, it's sunshiny vistas, and it's very paradisical. I don't know. It's very Eden-like, it's very, or Edenic maybe is the right. Yeah. But it's like, it's sunshiny. It's, again, it's sort of like the architecture is very reminiscent of like that sort of the style that the White House was built in, that kind of thing, where it's like, it's grand. It's a little regal. It's celebratory. It's kind of like, and again, lots of really bright colors, people walking around, and sort of like they're dressed well. They've got like the little straw, like the men have like the straw hat, flat brim straw hat things with the ribbons, and they've got the nice suit jacket kind of thing. And the women are wearing nice dresses, and it's, it's very kind of prim. It's very proper. It's very sunshiny. And Booker's kind of meandering through this like sort of seeing like this floating city in action, and you there's a couple times where you watch like platforms will just disengage, and they'll sort of like fly off to go join a different part of the city, and again there's this sort of and I've just got a full disclosure for somebody who is not a fan of heights. Like, this game works. Oh, dude, like, this game works on me on a personal level in a way that I was like,
interesting. Okay.
I don't like heights, and I can overcome it for video games, but there is that initial there's an initial queasiness almost. Yeah. That kind of accompanies some of this stuff. But anyways, Booker sort of one, and there's a fair going on essentially where you it's some of it is like there's some tutorialization. So it's like you get exposed to the original vigors, and you get your first vigor, and then it shows you there's a couple shooting games where, it's like you got to shoot the rebels, and you get introduced to the shotgun, and you get introduced to the rifle, and again, there's sort of there's this tutorial and it's kind of nice. It's like, it kind of eases you into the game a little bit. And then you proceed, and actually when you get your vigor, you use it to, it's this, I forget what it's called, that the initial one, but it's sort of a charm. And the way that it works is you can target humans with it,
and they will sort of convert to your side momentarily, or you can use it on the different machines and it will sort of hack them. And so you use that, you hack a machine, you get a ticket to go into the lottery, and you walk up and a girl gives you a ticket and your number gets drawn. And then what you find out is like, and this is where the game sort of just veers, like it kind of like the disconnect sort of happens right here, where it's like the sunshiny sort of, again, the Edenic sort of thing. And it's like, and this is where the rug kind of gets pulled out from underneath you. You're given a baseball, and then an interracial couple is pulled out onto the stage, and you realize that the baseball is like the person who gets to throw the first stone, so to speak, at this couple. And I think it's a white man and a black woman. And that's when sort of like the ugly mask, it's sort of like the mask comes off and you sort of see like the true horror behind all this. Booker, and at this point in time, you're given the option, and there are a few times throughout the game, and this is something that I actually didn't appreciate about the design. Like, you're given this option. It's like you can throw it at them, or you can throw it at the sort of the MC, right? And it does change some things, right? But it's kind of one of those things where it almost feels like a little bit of a token. There's actually another decision you make later on that kind of feels like it has an impact, but not really. It's almost like, it's sort of like it changes a few things, but it doesn't actually change the substance of the story or even how people interact with you in a lot of ways. It just changes. It's almost like these kind of a cosmetic change. So you kind of go, and this ultimately leads you into your first altercation with the police. And this is where, again, it's sort of like, it just sort of, you've sort of been introduced to some of the ugliness, but then Josh, you get your melee weapon, and it's called the Skyhook. And it's a device that people use to, again, attach themselves to these different sky rails that sort of are lining the city. But you can also use it to jump up to like elevated points. But you get it, you wrestle it off of a dude's arm, pretty much, and then you jam it into his the other cop's face,
shoulder.
And
I mean, it's essentially a blender. You know, it's like blender blades going through. So you rip them open.
Yeah, and, it is not. It's three fairly significant hooks, sort of, that whirl around. And so it's like, this is a thing that would hurt. Like, you know, and it's kind of remarkable because like you even when you do melee people, it's like, it's almost like, it just feels like it should have had like maybe more of a cooldown or something, because like, I think for most people, like if you get punched in the face with that thing, you're done. Like, but like these dudes,
brains from the floor.
It's like, it's gonna like, and it's not a very effective weapon in a lot of ways, because like, it's going to, you know, like one of those hooks whips around and like jams you in the temple. Like, anyways, there you go. You're done. But that's sort of, and after that, you're just kind of, you're running through the city of Columbia. And again, you're in pursuit of the girl, right? But now you're in conflict with the police and the local constabulary. And so, and that's sort of like the opening, I don't know, half hour or so, somewhere in that ballpark.
Right. So. Yeah. And then you're on a wild ride, you know, through the rest of the game as you kind of go back and forth. And there's a bunch of stuff there. Since we're in, you know, spoiler territory, I'd say, I'd hope that you've already played the game. I don't want to, we're not going to talk about story beats necessarily. I wanted to talk about just some of the things throughout the game that stuck out to me the most, and some of the themes that I saw in the game. So one of the things I would say, it probably sticks out to me the most, Yeah. Anyways, so you get this scene at the beginning of the game, like you just explained, where there's this interracial couple. So clearly the people in Colombia are racist. Okay. And they end up making that very, very clear throughout as the game progresses, that basically any black people you come across are, like house servants and things like that.
At best.
Right. Oh yeah. There's implications that there's abuse as well. And it's same deal. Not quite as bad, but there are Asian people in Colombia as well that just have a lower social status than all the high status people that you've seen, so far.
Well, and that, so it's, those are the two more obvious, but then also there is also, and again, it's something that they're sort of like hearkening back to at that sort of period in time in American history. The Irish were actually looked upon as incredibly unfavorably. And it's a little harder to see, but even there, like, there are the different audio logs. That's a mechanic from the original game. Like they bring that back.
That's true. Yeah.
And you kind of listen to some of these things, and it's like they'll talk disparagingly about like their Irish laborers. There's a whole section of the game where you're sort of infiltrating this factory, and the guy is basically like he's basically he talks about, he's like, making the worthless Irishman worthwhile kind of thing, like and so there's a lot of, again, that sort of, there's the more blatant racism against black and Asians, blacks and Chinese, or then there's the much more subdued racism sort of. But again, like all three of these people, they exist in Colombia, but they're all, at best, they're like second or third class citizens. But like,
right,
they're mostly,
and you're not seeing them walk around outside either.
Yeah.
They're so. Yeah. I would say initially in playing the game, I thought I kind of rolled my eyes at these depictions, because while I am not saying that these things didn't happen, I feel that in the game it is portrayed in a very ham-fisted way. It is not subtle. It is like, oh, anyone who is not as fair as Snow White in this game is like, oh, looked down upon.
Yeah,
like, there's no one that shows compassion.
If your gene pool doesn't pour right off the mountains of Caucasus,
right, yes, and it's very much like you don't come across anyone who's compassionate. You don't come across people who, what you mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, let's take the worthless Irishman and give him a purpose by letting him, run all our machinery, or, teach him how to do these different things. That's like the closest that you get. But I felt that the racism in this game was very ham-fisted. So I did not think it was, a courageous thing. We're going to depict racism. I do think there's more nuance, even in our own American history, than what this game presents. Okay. And that's not to deny like obvious, racism in our past. Okay. I'm not denying it, but I'm saying I think this game is ham-fisted in the way that it comes across.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think like that's one of the things, and Levine's a bit of an auteur, like, and his whole, like, but he's very cynical, right? Like, I just think in regards to human nature and the variety of human expression. And so even sort of, this is something in the original Bioshock, like, I remember he like reading something where he said like he wanted to play with objectivism, like the Randian objectivism, but he wanted to insert real people. Like he was basically sort of playing with like the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, but instead of sort of having these idealized sort of heroes, he was like, what if we just put real people in there? And I think that that's a really interesting thought experiment. But again, ultimately, I think like he's sort of cynical in sort of his portrayal of real people. And it's like you're going to get a much more nuanced sort of response and expression. And yeah, so like I think like that's the thing is like there's not a lot of subtlety. It's just it is ham-fisted. And that's kind of where like I think where some of the artfulness kind of breaks down a little bit. And because it's just like it's like, yeah, okay, like racists are bad. Like,
right.
It's like,
yes, exactly.
It's like, hey, let's kill racists and let's kill Nazis. It's like, it's the same.
Right.
It's like, it's kind of like the same. Yeah. Okay. And it's not to be like, hey, but it's like, the human experience is a lot more nuanced than that. And so, yeah.
I mentioned how I watched through, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I feel like a lot of the things that they deal with in that show, they actually provide nuance. They provide different points of view. They allow you to, they have a resolution, but they also allow you to really kick around the difficulties of different positions and things like that. So this game does not do that. Okay. So it put a bad taste in my mouth in terms of that. Okay. That's not like it is not the main plot line, but it is very apparent throughout the game. Okay.
I think some of it is this, that like a way to is like, there's no righteous white people. Like, and I don't want to,
right.
It's like, you kind of say that and it's like, but yeah, it's like, no, all the white people in here are bad. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Neat.
Right.
Like,
exactly. Yes.
But also it kind of makes sense too, because like later on, like you see that like there's pictures of like, and there's even like a cult. And again, it's not, they don't go into it a ton, but like Abraham Lincoln is reviled,
Okay.
In Colombia. He's portrayed, there's actually a mural. I don't know if you remember seeing it, but it's like George Washington leading the forces of Colombia, and then or the Confederacy, and then Lincoln and the armies of the Union, and Lincoln is portrayed as a demon, like as devilish. And so there's actually a cult in the game that actually sort of venerates John Wilkes Booth for assassinating the great oppressor. And so like it makes sense in sort of even in the framework of the game, but again, it's really pretty ham-fisted.
Yeah. So with all that and that kind of in my mind of like, this is an annoying thing that's constantly within this game. What ends up happening probably 3/4 of the way throughout the game. I'm not going to go into detail, but basically you end up teaming up with the Vox Populi, the voice of the people in Latin, that are these basically third-class citizens that are just looking to revolt against it. And you understand why, because they've been abused, because they've been oppressed in this society. So it makes sense. You end up joining with them and fighting against the oppressors. And this is where the turn was for me. So even though up to this point, like it had been, again, I keep using this term, but laid on very thick and like I said, ham-fisted, what ends up happening is that, long story short, the leader of the Vox Populi, when finally faced with some of the characters that are oppressors, violently murders these people and basically become and doesn't just want equality, but wants to take over.
She wants to annihilate them.
Me, right. And that to me was like, okay, this is actually interesting. So it's not just so even though it doesn't show any nuance for the oppressors, it also shows the impact of revenge. That it does not show that therefore those who are oppressed are all good. No, actually it shows, hey, given the same choice to oppress others, we're all going to be tempted towards that. And in this case, they fall to that. They end up becoming, let's just tear it all down, no matter who has to die in the process.
Yeah.
We're going to burn this to the ground. And I was very surprised that was the message that was given, because I'm used to a lot of modern media that would say, no, the oppressors are always evil and the oppressed are always good, and they will do what's right and good, and the oppressors will get what's coming to them. And this says, it's a good thing to fight against that, but also that they're going to be caught up in it, that revenge is ultimately going to consume those who are looking purely for revenge.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. That's probably the best theme, even though, again, it's a very dark theme because there's no good guys. I actually really appreciated it. And it's funny to me that a lot of, if you search around online, the game gets a lot of flack for doing this, especially to that leader character, Daisy, and and how she brutally murders people. The game gets flack because they're like, whoa, she's not supposed to be doing this. She's supposed to be a good guy. And this is actually problematic that you would have this person doing this. It's like, well, yeah, it's problematic because it's actually showing the heart of humanity, not of white people all bad.
Well,
it's like,
but again, it's just more of that cynical take where it's like,
right.
It's just like Levine is just revealing like sort of like, the
human condition.
Like, well, and like almost like a contempt for humanity where he's like, yeah, there's nothing good here on either side. Like, it's just garbage on both sides. Like, and again, it's like, I just, the human condition and the human expression of like, even in these scenarios, he makes it sort of way more binary than it actually is. And again, I think he sort of reveals a bit of like just cynicism towards humanity. And to a certain extent, I would agree with him. Like, yeah, people kind of suck, Sure. But like, I think too. So yeah, definitely when he's sort of, because it is the game sort of in some ways like, we're just conditioned to be like, okay, like the rebellion's like it's that's going to be like the virtuous side of things,
right?
And then it's like even the way that you first come into contact with them, it's really like, hey, actually they kind of suck. Like they might be a little desperate, but like also they suck because and sort of going back is like before you run into the Vox Populi, you actually get to this tower and you meet Elizabeth, the girl that you're supposed to rescue, that you need to take back to New York City. And you get her out of her tower, and that's where you come into contact with the songbird and everything, who instead of like having big daddies, now there are these like sort of like these George Washington automaton things that are kind of cool. They're big daddy-esque. And there are the handymen, who are basically men who they're like steampunk cyborgs, essentially, I guess is like what I would. The handymen are kind of adjacent to the big daddies, but like you have the songbird, which is this massive, they never explain what it is, like, which is like, at least not in the main game, which is kind of unfortunate because like, I was like, it's such a cool design. Like but it's Elizabeth's guardian essentially. And, and so you come into confrontation with that, and you actually steal an airship, and you go to escape, and then like Booker basically lies to Elizabeth and says, I'll take you to Paris. And he's like, he punches the coordinates in to go to New York. She kind of freaks out and bonks him on the head. And that's when things go sideways. And that's when you come into contact with Daisy and the Vox Populi. And again, they've hijacked your blimp and your airship. And and so it's just one of these things where it's kind of like it's villains all the way down, man.
Right. Right.
Everybody kind of sucks. Like there are people who are being oppressed, and instead of the reaction to be overthrow the oppressors and, you know, sort of establish justice, right? It's overthrow the oppressors and then destroy them and make them the oppressed now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, so it's pretty grim.
Right. Yeah. But I was surprised that they went there with it. And I'm glad that they did, that it was not just one side, but it's that given the temptation, hey, anyone can be an oppressor, you know?
Yeah.
It's not inherent to your
well, and that's because it's like a lot of times we're like, if I were in that situation, I wouldn't do that. And it's like, it's kind of like the one that like always makes me laugh, where people are like, well, if I was in the Garden of Eden, I wouldn't have eaten the fruit. And I was like, nah, dummy, you might have done it sooner. Shut up. Like, like calm down. But I also think, like, you know, so like I do like that, but also like I said, it does just feel like, again, Levine just feels really cynical. Now there's some really, because like the other side of this too is the way that he pairs like Christian, sort of like Christianity with sort of an authoritarian government kind of thing. Like that's really problematic. And it's kind of one of those things where, you know, it's definitely like the worst possible example of like what a Christian informed government could look like. It takes a lot of cues from it's almost like, what's that, The Handmaid's or whatever, that
Handmaid's
stupid
Tale.
Margaret Atwater book or whatever that like, it's just like, it's not interested in sort of like realistic portrayals. It's like
right.
it turns like anybody who would want to sort of shape government in, you know, through a Christian lens into twirling, you know, like villains twirling their mustaches, kind of like, where it's all about domination and control. And so that's like one of the notes is that, like, yeah, it's a sort of there's this very like Christian coded kind of like cultish thing. And again, sort of even going back to the way that the founding fathers or the founders are portrayed almost in sort of like as like Roman Catholic saints. Like this is a very like cultish sort of blending of like, you know, this is a bit of a loaded term, but it's like, it is a dark portrayal of Christian nationalism. And I don't want to go too far down this road, right? Like, because I don't think this is an honest, you know, again, it's the ham-fistedness of all of it and everything else, but it's like, and he's not interested in having any discussion about that. It's just like, no, like he's just kind of, which is kind of at odds in a lot of ways because of, you know, you and I talked about this a little bit, but in the original Bioshock, Christianity actually makes a bit of a presence, and it's not, they don't really emphasize it, but like there are Christians who are trying to get into Rapture to help people. They're trying to bring Bibles and they're trying to help people, and they are seen as being kind of like merciful, like, and so they serve as a bit of a counterpoint again to the objectivism run amok. Whereas in this game, he just kind of like it's just like, it's all mustache twirling villains, you know, and false prophets. And so that is really, but again, there his just the sort of the way he's interacting with it. It's like Levine is very like, at best, I think, cynical in the way he's treating this stuff.
Yeah, because like you said, so you've got these two things kind of intermingled within the city of Columbia. Obviously, you've got the patriarch of the area, which is Comstock. That's his name. So you've got Comstock, who, you know, has set himself up as this prophet, and you learn, that his prophecies are because he can kind of see into other dimensions. I'm not going to get into all of that and how, but so he takes the iconography of early America and of Christianity, these images, this vibe of Christianity, but none of it is real and points to what those things originally were. So like none of the Christian iconography throughout the game has anything to do with Christianity.
Mhm.
It's simply he sets himself up as a prophet, and so he makes prophecies. He says that basically your character at the beginning of the game, he says you're the false prophet, sent by, so you're demonic. You talked about the Abraham Lincoln is this demon. So these religious images, and then in order to get into Columbia, you need to be baptized. Baptism is a reoccurring thing throughout this game. This idea of death and rebirth through baptism, but none of it has any actual tie to Christianity. It just has these vague themes. It's all a veneer, and so it is very much a cult. But it felt again kind of ham-fisted in that none of it was even close. Because even though it has this veneer, this imagery of Christianity, none of it actually, there's no ethics behind it. There's no God character either. It's all. I mean, smoke and mirrors, but that might even be more substantial because it's really
there's a Christian, and sort of going back to earlier, but there's a Christian shaped thing in this game that when you sort of really look at it and crack it open, does not really resemble Christianity. It resembles a type of carnal Christianity, maybe. Where but it's very cultish. Like it actually, in some ways, I think reminds me a little bit of almost like Mormonism.
Right. I mean, even down to this veneer, it runs to even the way that Comstock talks. And he talks a little bit like this when he gives you his prophetic utterance, something like that, where that is just a veneer, like that's vaguely sounds like a way that someone in church would talk, when they're presenting. That's not something that you get when you turn on the TV and the newscaster talks like that. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I mean, you said something coded earlier. It's kind of Christian coded of that era, of that time, but it doesn't actually carry with it any sort of Christian message. It's that thin of what it is. And so, like you said, to me, it came off, just you pointed it out, very cynical of like, oh yeah, it's this vague idea of Christianity, but nothing about it is actually Christian.
There's definitely like it, and it's one of those things where I think sort of even that treatment of it sort of begs the question is like, because I don't think, I don't know that Levine has any sort of faith himself. And I think actually I remember reading somewhere that he kind of says like part of his problem was like in dealing with Infinite was writing faith without having a faith of his own kind of thing. And I'm paraphrasing again, the thing that I read, but like, so that was a bit of a struggle for him because he was like, it's like, if this is a man who is at best a secular humanist or something along those lines, like, yeah, he doesn't have a framework. And it's like, so for him, it's just sort of utilizing this thing as a bit of a set piece. I think though, like, I know that you don't want to get too lost in the weeds on sort of like the mechanics behind all of this, but I do think it's pretty interesting because what Levine is actually like the explanation for all of this is sort of multiversality or a multiverse of things, but also it's quantum entanglement. And it's sort of like, So like what keeps actually Columbia afloat is actually quantum mechanics, which is that's so it's kind of I am not nearly smart enough to try and explain quantum mechanics. I think I have sort of a roughly idea of how it's supposed to work, but it's almost like one of these things where it sort of like borrows from potential. Like in a quantum state, there is potentially like a limitless amount of energy. But the girl, and part of one of the mechanics is actually the girl that you find, Elizabeth, has the ability to interact with these tears, sort of these like quantum anomalies. And so it's like, and that actually plays a part. But like even sort of like Comstock's ability to predict the future, yeah, it's like he can sort of look into an alternate reality and make decisions to not have that reality happen, kind of thing. And so but in doing so, and I think this is actually kind of important for the story too, and I don't want to get too mired down in the details, but what happens is what you come as you're listening to the different audio logs and everything is like Comstock was actually rendered sterile by using this machine that had been developed by this scientist. And so what he did is he had this vision where his seed needed an heir, but he couldn't produce one because he was rendered sterile. So what he did is he actually sent these scientists into a parallel dimension where he hadn't been baptized, where he had gotten married and had a child. And he basically stole that child. And one of the big plot twists is that Booker DeWitt is actually Comstock from a different dimension, and that Elizabeth is Booker's daughter.
Yeah.
And so that in a way, Elizabeth is a son or a daughter. She's a scion of the line,
Right.
But, and so there's and there's lots of weird stuff about guilt and just like, this is where we talk about like this storyline is messy. It's really kind of hard to, there's some really interesting themes that they're wrestling with and everything, but it's just, you've got this and it's kind of fascinating, but it's all wrapped up in this, again, like this quantum entanglement and this multiversal kind of, dimension hopping weirdness. And like, unfortunately, I think kind of, and it's kind of interesting because they repeat. I think I want to talk about the ending a little bit because like, and we mentioned that you start off with baptism, you end with a baptism. And it's kind of one of these things though, too, where I think one of the sort of surface level tricks that's like, the "would you kindly" line from the original Bioshock reveals that like this thing is like, there's all sorts of questions about like choice and everything else. And objectivism is about like radical self-empowerment and sort of, and in a lot of ways, like Bioshock is kind of an examination of like, hey, like what happens when like individualism goes nuts off the rails. And I think sort of in some ways Bioshock Infinite is asking different questions, like what happens when sort of different types of collectivism go off the rails? What happens when religion is used as sort of an authoritarian sort of like wicked implementation? Like there's all sorts of interesting questions, and again, maybe the answers aren't that great, but there's interesting questions in all of this stuff. And I think, like I said, I think to a certain extent, like Levine is a little hostile to Christianity And it's like, I don't know if he would say that himself, but it's like, I think like, again, just sort of like the game. So it's one of those things that like in playing it, you have to sort of like reckon with that and you have to wrestle with that. But like, it's sort of one of these things where it's like, I kind of saw like echoes here. And when you get to the end, it's like part of what was really, really fun is like, Levine was using the fact that like games really happen in pretty like story, especially story heavy games, like really like unfold in very linear fashions. And there might be the illusions of free will, the illusions of agency, the illusions of choice. But the reality is like, you're just sort of dancing along to what the game designer has for you. And again, it's sort of like that sort of same question and scenario gets played with in Infinite. And when you get to the end, like you're sort of brought back, like there's sort of at the end, there's almost sort of this like, it's not really info dumps. Like, I don't know what would you call that last like 20, 30 minutes of the game? Because like you're walking through these different vignettes and you're sort of seeing like, and that's what really brings all the pieces together. That's where the revelation that Booker and Comstock are the same people. They're just like from two different quantum realizations, like two different realities in a lot of ways. Like that's when you find out that Elizabeth is Booker's daughter and you see what happened and sort of why he's actually, in Colombia. And you see all of this stuff and sort of, it asserting itself, and it comes back and it brings you back to a choice that really isn't a choice. And so what you find out is that the sort of the transformative, like the big transformative sort of event here is if Booker DeWitt is carrying a tremendous amount of guilt from, he was a bit of a war hero, but he was a savage and he butchered his enemies. So he butchered tribes of Indians. And in remorse, he sort of lost himself for a while and he got baptized. And this is the point of divergence. So when Booker DeWitt gets like repents, and I'm throwing up air quotes here, but like when he repents and he is baptized, he comes out and he's renamed Jeremiah Comstock. But if he doesn't get baptized, he doesn't repent, he actually becomes a bit of an alcoholic. He has a relationship where he loses his wife for some reason, and he ends up giving away his daughter. Yeah, and I don't know if that's the order. I think it kind of makes sense that if he gave away his daughter, then his wife would be like, "What? Like, why am I hanging out with you? Go, like you suck, dude." And so, there's kind of this thing. And so what happens is you go through this sort of, is it a montage? I don't know what
I mean, it's basically a walking simulator,
Yeah.
I think of the lighthouse and that whole area, the pier, the lighthouse.
Yeah. And again,
you're
you're sort of getting this, like there's choices, but all of them are the illusion of choice.
Right.
Like, and you get to the end and you're standing there and then you're confronted with a dozen or more Elizabeths who are basically looking at you and saying the only way is for you to get baptized and die, and so that Comstock never actually exists. Like, which is incredibly disappointing. Like, and again, we're talking about the cynicism of this, and like, we understand that in some ways, like our baptism doesn't save us, but it is a mark, it is a sign, it is the seal of the proof of the transformation that is happening in our lives, right? The renewal. And like, there's almost like what's really disappointing, especially for us as believers, is that the sacrament is sort of seen as this empty thing, and it's perverted, because it's like there's no opportunity for real repentance or real transformation. It's like it's like Booker DeWitt will be a monster on either side. And the only answer is just to kill Booker DeWitt. And it's like, and again, the use of baptism is really pretty, I don't know. I don't like it.
Right. Yeah, that'd be sacrilegious at the very least. To have the imagery of death and rebirth, and then ultimately just death. There is no rebirth because there is no redemption for this character. Because in what would have been his redemption, he actually becomes a madman. You see alternate universes where basically Comstock wages war on the rest of the Earth and destroys, the Earth, and
it's
Anna
not even
goes and
it's not even Comstock. It's Elizabeth,
right? Yeah,
there's there's a whole sequence where you go through this alternate reality where you're trying to rescue Elizabeth, and it's an Elizabeth from years. Like it's sort of, again, a branching path line where Booker never came to rescue her, and she laid waste to the world. Yeah. And so there's this sort of like, there's this burning cityscape, and she pulls and she looks at that Booker and she says, I called you here so that you could actually, like, she's like, I'm going to send you back so that you can stop this. And it's pretty wild.
So there's the problems that I have with using, baptism. We started off by talking about how messy this game is. And again, in contrast to the original Bioshock, which I did not find as messy, which sure, there might be some holes in it. But overall I thought was really well done. I saw a lot of things that I'm just like, man. And I mean, it's the nature of multiverses. It's the nature of time, time travel stories also, because they do, go back in time in order to get Anna as the baby and call her Elizabeth, and, and go back and forward. And really the timelines
Anna is Booker's wife, I think.
Oh, but I thought that's what the AD on his hand meant. Anna DeWitt, right? Because they rename her to Elizabeth, right? Okay. Well, I could be wrong.
Those details, like,
regardless,
in some ways,
the Elizabeth character, So anyways, there's messiness going into it of like, okay, if Booker, let's say Booker is in his early 30s, okay? Well, how old is Comstock? He's not 80, he might be pushing 70. But he looks pretty dang good for his age. So in 40 years, you're telling me he has found out the secret to quantum mechanics. He's created this entire, thing in the sky. He has all these people with him. He also, has created the civilization. All the, vigors and things like that. All of this scientific progress has happened in the span of 40 years if that's like youngest Booker and oldest Comstock.
Yeah, I think part of it though is like, and we didn't talk, but there's a scientist, and it's a brother and a sister, and it turns out that they're actually the same person, but from two different realities, and they're the ones responsible for all of this. So like they're like all the big technological advances, it's them. But then, like, sort of like, and so even talking about, like, when I mentioned the music, you find out that, like, the greatest composer of that era basically is just stealing music from other realities and then rewriting it for his own era. So that's like the Beach Boys being sung by the Barbershop Quartet is like, and it's like, and that's the thing is like, so much of it is just fraudulent. It's just like they're stealing. So it's like they're just stealing these ideas in this tech and all this other thing. And that's what gives them their advantage. Like, again, the like, Comstock is a prophet only because, not because he actually possesses any like prophetic insight or revelation, but because he's able to sort of like, again, sort of peer into like these quantum branching path lines, whatever. And then sort of, he's like, he can use that to sort of protect his own interests in the reality that he's in. And it's just one of those things where, yeah.
There's messiness with why Comstock wanted, why he wanted Elizabeth. Like, why was he so fixated in someone having from his own line? Because then apparently the explanation behind her powers is the fact that part of her finger is in another reality. So she's in two realities at the same time. So it gives her magical powers to rip across different timelines, multiverses, and things like that. Which, okay, I mean, I guess that's an explanation. But okay, so the messiness, though, I see one of the biggest parts of the idea of baptism is Booker is he's a drunk. Okay, he's an alcoholic, and because of this PTSD and because of the atrocities that he participated in and saw while he was fighting against the Indians. Okay, and then there's this baptism that occurs, and he becomes a new man. I mean, that's when he becomes Comstock. So Comstock is not an alcoholic. So something clearly happened to Booker that, okay, now I'm a new man. I have had my sins washed away. So now I'm going to embark on this new thing and become a new man. Except to me, he doesn't become a new man because it's all based on lies. Like, even the whole Colombia itself is still just as racist. There's areas in Colombia that actually that are a monument to those specific wars against the Indians as well, against the Chinese. You have to walk through kind of this museum, for lack of a better
even there
word.
it's like he portrays himself as a hero in battles that he wasn't even in. There's like, it's just like he just can't help but like write himself as the hero.
Mm-hmm. And so it, like, that just doesn't seem to make sense to me, of this character that had a profound experience at this baptism and yet doesn't change at all. He just kind of sheds, like, oh, I no longer have PTSD, but I'm still a trash human being. Like, I'll still try and create something, but ultimately it is going to be self-serving. Like, it's not.
I think that's just like, again, that's just the cynicism Levine of Levine.
What baptism is. Yeah, it's an attempt at what covering sin without any form of sanctification.
Well,
right?
And again, it's just like, it is that, like, yeah, it's like, because like Levine is inherently, I think, cynical regarding any sort of faith. In a way, he's like, what he's saying is like, I don't think people can change.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Like, and it's like, so it's like, for him, it's like, well, there's a transformation, but he just becomes a monster of a different sort. And I think that's really where, like, there's a lot of friction. One, there is we wrestle with, like, again, the sacrilegious element, right? Of just like, hey, like, you're actually sort of like really misusing and misrepresenting and defiling, the sacraments here. So there's that, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Desecrating it. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, there's sort of like this, like, it's like, even like when Booker sort of like allows himself to be drowned, he says, "It is finished." Like, Telestai. Like,
yeah. Which, okay, so that moment at the end of the game, like, oh, it's a gut punch. It's unsatisfying. I feel like it's a bit of a cop out, but on top of that, on the top of all those things, and we can go down those routes if we really want to, if we're going to continue. I found it to be ultimately unsatisfying, because I think this is another part.
It's not Telestai, it's Tetelestai.
Tetelestai, yeah.
Tetelestai, yes.
Two of those, yeah. My pastor has that tattooed on his wrist. In English, not in the Greek letters. Anyways,
he'd be cooler if it was in Greek.
You're right.
Nobody'd be able to read it.
I like him.
But no. Yeah.
But talking about the messiness of this game is that it also, as I've kind of sat and thought about it, I'm honestly frustrated that I feel like the ending does not make sense, because through this entire game you're going through different multiverses, you're meeting different versions of different characters. There are characters that have died in one timeline that are alive in other timelines, so we've established the fact that death in one timeline does not affect other timelines. However, apparently, because Ken Levine says so, if he's drowned in his baptism, therefore there are no bookers and there are no more Comstocks. Well, like, this actually ripple effects through all the other multiverses, which does not make sense to me at all. You can correct me, but this, like, I mean, there's a freaking ghost boss in this game. So, like, death clearly is not...
It's not really a ghost, though. That's even there. They sort of, like, it's this, like, quantum shadow thing, but it's like, it's functionally a ghost. Yeah.
From another multiverse.
Yeah.
And so, like, it does not make sense to me that this would affect the other multiverses.
Like, maybe maybe he's like, well, they're doing it in this special, like, multiversal pool where it's like, if he dies here, then somehow that just, like, purges him from all the timelines. Like, but again, I think
that's
even
such a cop out.
But it's like
that doesn't make sense.
Even what they say is something like, it's like in all the different realities, it kind of comes down to, like, does he get baptized or doesn't he?
Right.
And it doesn't, like, it's like, but even there, it's like,
it's like his baptism in every single instance.
And so maybe in this one, again, maybe there's some sort of, like, they're in, like, a sort of a singular point that sort of, like, echoes out through all the other. I don't know, dude.
But that has not been set throughout the rest of the game. There has never been another point that affects all the others. It doesn't make sense.
I'm like, yeah, I get that. But it's like, that's not even that's like the least of my concerns. It's like, this isn't even, like, one of the things. I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, narratively, it's just like, I'm just like, whatever, dude. Like,
you have to end it somehow, and this is how
you have to. It's like,
that's how it feels to me. Which, again, is very odd coming off the first Bioshock, like, expecting the first Bioshock. And I think that one's done. Yeah. Like, I think it all ends up making sense. And sure, there might be a hole here here or there. Well, I don't know. None that stuck out to me. Whereas this one's like, kind of, that's like, what you decided.
And I think, like, the thing is, like, there's actually, like, there can be a silver lining in the original Bioshock, but here it's just ugly and it's just cynical.
Just darkness.
Like, it's just, there's no hope. It's just kind of like, nope, it just sucks. This is just bad. And the only, and I think this is what, like, secular humanism sort of ultimately retreats into. Like, we've talked about it so many times, like with Nier Automata, and it's like, and I think, like, here, like, Levine just kind of, in the game, he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, the best possible thing is just to die.
Right.
And again, like, I think that, like, that's what's kind of, I think the game's interesting. And I think, again, there's things there that are kind of, I don't know if I can even say worth wrestling with in some ways, but because it's like I said, it's one of these things where I think ultimately I'm kind of landing in this camp. Like, the game, you can play it, and there are interesting things to take away with and sort of wrestle with, but as a general rule, like, it's just so hostile to hope.
Yeah.
And it's not even just, like, the fact that it is, like, it's hostile to Christianity in a lot of ways, through its portrayal and everything else. But it's just like, it's just like, it's kind of like one of those things where it's almost like one of these things where, like, you were talking about sort of how, like like the ending bothers you because it's kind of incoherent. It doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't even follow the logic of its own things. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I think what's even sort of more frustrating about it to me isn't that it's like incoherent, but it just sort of like shrugs at the incoherentness. And it's like, this is the best that we can do. Like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, but it doesn't matter. The best thing you can do is die. And it kind of like,
right. That message. Oh, like that is a dark place to come to. And not only, I mean, look,
I don't know that, and to be fair, I don't know that that's Levine's intent. I'm just saying the way that they land the plane, I'm just like, dude.
And not only that, like if you've played this, guys, whoever's listening, guys, girls, whoever, your own daughter has to drown you, has to kill you in the waters of your baptism. Like, dude, this is dark. Like, this is not, I'm laughing uncomfortably right now because the more that I think about this, the worse that it gets. I think man, I think here on this recording, I'm kind of souring on the game a bit too, because this message is pretty terrible. Especially because we've been talking about the idea of baptism, because this character of Booker has these sins that he knows he needs to atone for, right? Yeah. And so his answer to do that is either baptism, okay, let's set that aside for now, or rejecting baptism. No, I'm going to find a way to do this on my own. And he does it through alcohol and through gambling away his wife and his daughter. So that ends in garbage.
But like the atonement, and he doesn't even realize it to a certain extent, but like he is like the whole journey is one of atonement.
Right.
Like he doesn't realize what he's doing, but he's trying to rescue his daughter. He's trying to fix the mistake he made.
Right.
15, 20 years ago. He's like, no, and again, he doesn't, like, he's subconsciously sort of like searching for that. And I think like, that's like, again, cause like, and that like, like, don't get me wrong. I enjoy like the interesting sci-fi, the weird, again, the quantum entanglement, like that stuff. It's like, I'm like, hey, this is like kind of neat. And it's like cool set pieces, but like, that's even there. It's just shallow. It's just like, it's a veneer the whole way down. It's like, because like, it's just where it ends is just like ugly and mean and cold. And it's just kind of like, and it's like, and in doing, and so like, even in doing this, it's like the world would be better off without Elizabeth. So Booker needs to die. And it's like, and it's just like, oh, like there's kind of, I don't know, man. It's like, how about you go back, like you find some sort of reality where Booker doesn't give his daughter to freaking Comstock.
Right.
How about that?
Or I don't remember the mechanics of everything, but can you go back to a Booker that doesn't go to war, like doesn't commit atrocities against the Indians, like something, or a reality where Booker comes across like an actual Christian who will preach the gospel to him and actually provide atonement for his sins, like. But obviously, if this is coming from the mind of someone who doesn't know that freedom from sin, then that's not an option that's presented within the game. Instead, the options are, become a Booker or become a Comstock, which eventually ends up even taking advantage of the other version of yourself to kidnap you and brainwash your daughter so that you would damn the rest of humanity.
There's monsters on both sides, like in either ditch, but then like too, like even there where it's just like there's something just kind of like like as we're talking about this, like it's funny, it's like like I am just like, I'm like, it's like, I know I said like you can play this, but I'm starting to be like, you can play this, but I don't know if you should. Like I mean, I'm still on board with that was an interesting, like
my favorite theme in the game is what ends up with the Vox Populi and just saying like, oh, don't become what you hate. You know, it's a cautionary tale of don't become what you hate.
Dude, yeah.
But there's no like redemptive theme of like, there is no redemption for Booker. It is only death and the world. Here's my problem. This is what I walked away with the game, walked away from the game. I remember this distinctly, is the world is a better place without you. And I'm like, oof, I don't like that. Like, this is dark.
And again, sort of like what's kind of thing is like the thing that sort of resonates with us is like, yeah, like, especially when it starts to kind of click into place, like going back to atonement for a second, like Booker's trying to atone. And like, ultimately, like what's so sort of disheartening is that Levine kind of looks at that and says, there is no atonement. And that's what the world says. Like, that's what we see in the world today, that people are saying there is like like, dude, cancel culture does this all the time where it's like, you have sinned, you know, whether it's like the social sin or whatever. Like, so you say the thing that you're not supposed to, and then people are like, cancel him. And it's like, you cannot atone. You cannot be forgiven. You like, at that point in time, just the best thing for you to do is just die. Like, and, you know, and I think like that's the part where it's like this, it's kind of like, as we're talking about this, I'm like, this is where like, as Christians, we're just like, no, we have like, we can look at this game and we can sort of, but we can look at the culture and say, actually, you can be forgiven. Like, and while you can't atone, there is one who can make atonement for you. Like, and like, you know, and again, where Elizabeth is the Lamb of Comstock, right? The Lamb of God, like, can, and it's one of those things like the, you know, the God man, Jesus of Nazareth, like, he fully God, fully human, came and lived among us, walked among us, lived a life that we could not. He lived a perfectly obedient and innocent life. He died the death that we should have. And then 3 days later, he rose again and conquered the grave. Like, we're coming off the heels of Easter, right? And like, so this stuff is like fresh, man. And it's like, and he put death to death. Now, like, it still has its sting, but it's like, the reality is like, one of the beautiful things about the Christian faith is like, you can be forgiven and atonement has been made for you. Like, yeah, you on your own power and by your own efforts cannot atone, but atonement can be made and has been made. Like, you can be, atonement has been made for you, you know, but it requires true baptism, you know,
which is a death, but it's also a resurrection.
And again, that's the important part. Like, you know, like Booker goes down and he dies and he goes to the tomb. He descends into the tomb, into the dark, into the cold, into whatever. But like, the fact is, Christ came out. And you know, I'm not trying to like get weird and Sunday school-ish, but like, you know, it's like, dude, like, that's the thing, is like, this game in so many ways, it is so dissatisfying at the end, because like, we have the better answer. And I think that's the hard part, where it's like, there's sort of a despair where like, you know, like, and it's like, but it doesn't have to be. It does not have to be that way. And so,
I think the last point I'll make, okay, and it's totally a side point, because all that I think is the best place to go. But thinking about it even covenantally, like, this game says it's better for you. Like, the answer is to just die, and honestly, that there is no memory of you, and that your lineage is wiped out as well, you know, because it's better for Elizabeth never to have existed either. Whereas the gospel, you see God working covenantally as well. So, man, I think all of that shows how I think there are specific games, we've talked about them before, something even like Nier Automata, that look kind of this despair in the eyes, and the redemptive part of it comes outside of the game in comparison to the true goodness and beauty of the gospel message. And so in light of that, that would be how I would recommend, if you want to play this game, that you need to keep in mind. Because I think I'm falling in that same camp of like a can play, but with heavy caution.
Well, it kind of reminds me of like, did you read Blood Meridian?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, you can read this. I don't know if it's a good idea.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's not one that I would recommend to, I like it's, there is beauty in the way that the story is told, which is weird because it's an ultra violent book. In the character, like that book still sticks with me. There's a lot in that book that I think is done masterfully and that just like sticks in your craw.
I think that in a lot of ways, it's like, even the way we're talking about, like there's a lot of really masterful work in Bioshock Infinite, but also like, and there's a lot of violence accompanies all of this. But it's almost like sometimes the question is like, maybe, okay, yeah, there's beauty here and there's some really like excellence here, but like, is it worth, is it worth the squeeze?
Yeah. Excellence is probably a better word than beauty. There might be some, anyways. Yeah. I feel like, this is weird to say, but I feel like there might be more like chance at redemption in Blood Meridian for the main character, for the kid, than there was for Booker. So, but yeah. I think that's we can't give this was not meant to be a comprehensive review of the game, but those were the main points that I wanted to, I remember finishing the game and just feeling like, oh wow, this is the game that, people think so highly, that was up there with BioShock. And I remember feeling like, no, especially because of the end, like, no, it is not as good as BioShock in my mind, even though I enjoyed the moment to moment gameplay, even though I was hooked by the game. But man, yeah, it's I do think the message that it tells is dangerous. It is good when contrasted with the gospel, or it is good to contrast it to the gospel. But you have to be, this is one you have to be careful with.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a can play, and I think there are, for people. For some people, there might be good there. I just have a really, after coming back from it, sort of sitting on the other side, like it's a game where I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like I don't want to bind anyone or sort of, but it's like, dude, it's just, I'm not sure sometimes it's like, I'm not sure the juice is necessarily worth the squeeze, So it's a can play. I do think, again, there are some things in there that are worth like sort of wrestling with. And I just think as far as a gameplay experience goes, I think it's a pretty satisfying game in a lot of ways. But that's, but also, it's really violent. It's really, and it ends on a pretty, kind of just like depressing note. Like,
oh yeah.
It's
more than just kind of.
Yeah,
definitely.
But yeah, so
cool.
I think, it's like you said, we weren't trying to really have a super comprehensive conversation about this, but I think we've done a pretty good job. Again, like if our goal was to sort of like sketch out a bit of an abstract, for the listeners, for our viewers, I think we've done an okay job in that regard. And I think like this is probably a pretty good place to just sort of land and just sort of start wrapping it up. So why don't we just move into the final forms?
Okay.
So that means, I guess we could talk like, just like the one thing in our notes here is like comparison with OG Bioshock. OG Bioshock is like, and we've talked about it, but just to like sort of like really kind of like tighten that one up. OG Bioshock is just, I think it's a more coherent package. And I think that it's just like, it's one of those things where I think in some ways, like Bioshock Infinite does really evolve things. I'm not necessarily sure it's for the better. So yeah, go if you want to play a Bioshock game and you haven't played a Bioshock game, go play the original Bioshock. I think it's scary, but it's really good. So
yeah,
but
I agree.
So we gave OG Bioshock a little bit of a shout out, but what else? We have shout outs. We have other shout outs to do.
Shout outs. That's right. A couple shout outs. So anytime. Okay. This is kind of just your standard. Hey, we got a new patron. So shout outs to you, Political Hail. I'm not sure what Political Hail is. I don't know if that's like golf ball sized or if that's, bigger than that, but shout outs to you, sir, because you're cool and you're now supporting us, which is pretty dang cool. So thank you for your support there. The other shout out that I have is one who just consistently posts in the Discord, and he goes by the name of Jimicus. And Jimicus lives on mission. He consistently updates us in the Discord about people that he is talking to who have come to know Jesus, people who are new to his church, people who are interested in the gospel that he's been talking to. And that is just so encouraging for me to hear and inspiring for me to hear. So shout out to you, Jimicus, because you're an encouragement and you're an inspiration. So thank you, sir, for your posts. That's what I've got to shout out.
Those are pretty good, man. Jimicus he's a real one. He's sort of like very just always sharing like and asking for prayer too. Like he's like, hey, so and so came to my church, or I had a gospel conversation with so and so. Could you be praying for them? So that's pretty cool. Yeah, Jimicus is a real one. And Political Hail, yes, also welcome. I did sort of add him to the Brochachos in the Discord, and so if you have any questions, man, about like getting all the stuff like set up or whatever, like feel free. Welcome to the community, and glad to have you. I have a couple shout outs as well. Apparently today, or when we started recording at the very least, it was Fake Nate's birthday. I don't like the fact that his birthday is so close to mine. I kind of resent that. One, it's bad enough that he like tries to like shoot, like sort of like shoehorn his way in as like another Nate. And that now is like, oh yeah, my birthday's in April too. Oh, is it? Yeah. Good for you. Happy birthday, Spike. All kidding aside, happy birthday, bud. Hope it was a good one. I mean, but yeah. The other side, I did want to just like, sort of, and maybe sort of, I'm maybe getting a little bit ahead, but I did want to shout out our friend, fellow Playwell Network contributor, Quick Mark. He's been sort of behind it. We've talked before about just how behind the scenes, he's really been instrumental in sort of like helping us sort of figure out like some directions and practical steps and sort of growing this thing. And one of the things we started doing, I think I mentioned it in my last bite-sized or whatever, but he's got a Substack started, and we're still trying to figure out the rhythm for all of that, what that looks like, kind of what we're going to be doing with it. And we've got a couple guys, behind the scenes as well, that we're talking about just different ways to leverage this. So yeah, but just wanted to say, like, shout out Mark. Appreciate your work there, brother. And he's just a good dude.
Yeah,
good dude.
You're a real one.
He's a real one. But is this and this is the last episode of our month. So yeah, there's no challenge updates. Oh well,
we just get to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah,
it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we've done all the closing forms. I guess it's time to just really wrap it up. So Josh, if they don't like what we've said, How
did
can
you
they
get
get a hold of
dropped
us,
or did
Bubba?
I get dropped? I don't know.
Oh no.
No,
Oh,
I got
no.
dropped.
Uh-oh. Ruh-roh raggy.
Attempting to
I'm just going to keep talking now.
reconnect.
Now he's going to have to fix this in post. Oh no, he's offline. Uh-oh.
Whoa. No. Are you flipping kidding me?
Let's see. I'm sending him a text. He went offline. Oh no, he's going to have to send him a text. Let's see what he says.
All right, am I back?
It says he read my text. Oh, here he's
Back,
back.
maybe? There we
You're
go.
back.
Yeah. Sorry,
you're-
internet pooped the bed.
You're
So now I'm
back,
connected.
baby.
With a mobile hotspot. But yeah.
There's
I
like
don't
2 minutes of me just like rambling and talking.
Yeah.
So
Patrons get it, but we'll cut it short.
yeah. But
So
anyways, we've done the things. There's no
We've
more
done 'em.
closing forms. So
Nothing.
if people want to get a hold of us, Josh, how can they
Yeah.
do that?
I said it earlier. I'll say it again. Go to linktree.com/the backlog breakdown. Check out the links there and get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
And of course, since we've done our things apparently twice, some of them, until next time, what should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.